I'm sorry, Drew. Show it. Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Steve's Dang-It's, or a classic Steve's Dang-It's. What's a dang-it? Well, I think the title is pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically a misplay. And since we're going through some of the biggest in NHL history, it's a legendary misplay. And this one, to me, is one of the most underrated misplays in NHL history, but you've probably heard of it even if you haven't seen it. This is the famous, or rather infamous, Statue of Liberty goal on Patrick Roy. And I'm going to remind everyone that producer Drew is helping out with this video, and he is a giant Colorado Avalanche fan, so this is probably going to cause him excruciating pain. So let's make it as long as possible, shall we? So why don't we re-watch history, watch the Statue of Liberty goal on Patrick Roy, and then afterwards, the story behind it. That's the real torture.
After the puck goes by the open side. Everyone talking about not much room for the great players in this series, but as Bob Hartley said, and Peter Forsberg just illustrated, the great players make room for themselves. Here's a chance, Yzerman! Oh, he just couldn't finish it off as Wall was down. Yzerman in front again, another chance, and a big stop, and the puck's in! Wall had it and dropped it, and Detroit scores first for the first time.
Patrick Roy just got caught hot dogging. Believe me, he was going to give it the how do you do, and he dropped the puck. But before that, Steve Yzerman with the first chance, and Blake saved the day for the Avalanche. Now Yzerman's late getting out of the corner because he just gets behind the defense. Now watch Roy, he's got it. And then he drops it. And he thinks he's got it in his glove, and I'm not so sure he was giving it the old, look what I got. Let's have a, yep. And how big is that goal with 38 seconds to go for the Detroit Red Wings?
It's even worse than I remember, man. Okay, let's talk about the context of the time. Because this season, the 2001-2002 season, started great for the Colorado Avalanche. It started as good as it possibly could on account of they were the reigning Stanley Cup champions. During the 2001 Stanley Cup Playoffs, the Avalanche had a 7-game war in the Stanley Cup final, taking on the New Jersey Devils. And in Game 7, Patrick Roy outdueled Martin Brodeur in a battle of two of the greatest goalies in NHL history to win the Stanley Cup. At the beginning of the 2001-2002 season, however, the Red Wings were making moves. Up front, they had Brendan Shanahan, Sergei Fedorov, Brett Hull, Luc Robitaille, Steve Yzerman, Igor Larionov. Chris Draper and Kirk Maltby were beasts as defensive forwards. Thomas Holmstrom was a beast in front of the net, and a young Pavel Datsyuk was even on that team. Not as star-studded on the backhand, but when you have Nicholas Lidstrom and Chris Chelios, that's about all you need. And not to mention, another one of the greatest goaltenders in NHL history, Dominik Hasek, in net. If you played against the Detroit Red Wings at the beginning of the 2001-2002 season, the pregame speech was a eulogy. They were the first place team in the entire league by a mile. 51 wins, 17 losses, 10 ties, and 4 overtime losses. That was a weird little time. There were still ties. They had introduced the overtime loser point, but those 51 wins that Detroit had, not a single one of them in the shootout. Every one of those 51 wins ended with a goal. The way it should be, in my opinion, but that's a completely different video. The Boston Bruins were the second place team in the NHL that year with 101 points, and the Red Wings had 15 more points than them. But Colorado, they're the reigning Stanley Cup champs. Regular season success isn't as important to them, and they still had it. They had a great record too. 45 wins, 28 losses, 8 ties, and 1 overtime loss. The Western Conference was full of monsters, but they were the two biggest ones, and a collision between the two of them in the Western Conference final of 2002 seemed inevitable. But first, there were the formalities of the first 2 rounds, which turned out to not be formalities. Remember how I said Detroit was the best team in the NHL by a country mile? First round against the Vancouver Canucks, Detroit down 2-0. Unfortunately for the Canucks, that might have woken up the beast because the Red Wings outscored them 11-3 over the next 3 games and won Game 7 6-4. 4 straight. Then in the second round, the Red Wings dealt with the St. Louis Blues in just 5 games. 2 of those wins were shutouts, including the 5th and deciding game where Dominik Hasek only had to face 16 shots. The Colorado Avalanche's journey to the 2002 Western Conference Final, much tougher. In the first round, the Avs were up 3-1 over the LA Kings, and they looked like they had it on lock. Until Felix Potvin, who was an LA King, that was a thing that happened, only allowed 1 goal over the next 2 games, and LA forced Game 7. Despite the scare, Patrick Roy and the Avalanche dealt with the LA Kings 4-0 in the 7th and deciding game. And I'll bet the Avalanche wish they had won in 5 or 6 games over the Kings, because then they went to war with the Sharks. The San Jose Sharks were victorious in Game 1 by a score of 6-3. Answering with the counterpunch, the Avalanche won Game 2 over the Sharks 8-2. The Sharks were actually up 3-2 on the Avalanche until Game 6 went to overtime, and Peter Forsberg was the overtime hero to force Game 7. The Avs won that 7th and deciding game by a score of 1-0. Patrick Roy with the shutout, and who else would score the lone goal but Peter Forsberg? Forsberg, the man they call Fopa, was a force in the 2002 Stanley Cup Playoffs. In 20 games, Forsberg had 27 points. No one else on the Avalanche, not even Joe Sakic, even hit 20. And Sakic played 1 more game. He played in 21. Forsberg missed a game. And this isn't Joe Sakic slander, it's simply, oh my goodness, Peter Forsberg was a monster. Now, with both teams through to the 2002 Western Conference Final, the collision finally happens.
And Roy was run into it. He's upset and he pushes Malkin. And now he wants to fight Malkin.
And here comes Hasek, John. Here comes Hasek from the other end.
Well, the rivalry isn't dead.
The Red Wings win 5-3 in Game 1.
And Detroit wins Game 1, 5-3. And Darren McCarty, the hero here, his first ever hat trick.
Colorado wins 3-2 in Game 2 in overtime. Chris Drury, the OT hero there.
Forced inside, shot the save made. Forsberg after the rebound. Drury scores! Put another one on!
The Red Wings reclaimed the series lead with a 2-1 overtime win in Game 3, Fredrik Olofsson scoring his first of the playoffs as the OT hero in that one. In Game 4, Colorado ties it right back up with a 3-2 win, Patrick Roy stopping 31 of 33 shots, despite being much busier than Hasek. And then Game 5 goes to overtime. The OT hero in that one? Peter Forsberg again, winning the game 2-1 for the Colorado Avalanche, putting them 1 win away from the 2002 Stanley Cup Final.
Draper lost his stick, cleared out onside, looking into the middle, Draper couldn't get it. Score! Colorado wins the game! Peter Forsberg! And
all of that leads to this. Game 6, a chance to put the Red Wings away, and it's in Colorado. It's a 0-0 tie with less than a minute to go in the first period. Face off in the Avalanche zone, Avalanche win it, and they take possession in the corner. The Avalanche can't clear the zone though, and Steve Yzerman, that guy, has a glorious chance in front. Patrick Roy sprawls! Puck rolls wide of the net. The Avalanche try to clear the puck again, but to no avail. This time, this guy, Nicholas Lidstrom, putting the puck on net. Once again, this guy, Steve Yzerman, glorious chance in front, and how did he not bury it? Absolutely, positively robbed by Patrick Roy. Now, if that was the end of this play, as it should have been, who knows? Because imagine the scenario. The Red Wings have been slaughtering teams for 8 months at this point, and now they sit on the brink of elimination. Right before intermission, their captain gets robbed like that? The clock winds down and then both teams head into intermission? What's the mood like in the Avalanche room? They're all 7 feet tall. We got an unbelievable monster in net. We're winning this thing. But the Red Wings, I know they had stars, veterans, guys who had won the Stanley Cup, guys who had won it in recent memory, but you cannot tell me that some of them wouldn't be thinking, we just blew our shot. They win this game. They punched their ticket to the 2002 Stanley Cup Final to take on the Carolina Hurricanes, who had just done away with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Final. And bless the Hurricanes in all they did to get to the 2002 Stanley Cup Final, but the Avalanche probably beat them. It's the playoffs and anything can happen, I know that, but in 2002, the West was better than the East. Specifically, the Red Wings and Avalanche were better than any opponent the East could throw at them. The Avalanche go to that 2002 Stanley Cup Final, they probably win their second straight cup. Instead, this happened. I'm sorry, Drew, show it.
Here's a chance, Yzerman! Oh, and he just couldn't finish it off as Wall was down. Yzerman in front again, another chance, and a big stop, and the puck's in. Wall had it and dropped it, and Detroit scores first for the first time.
That did not seriously just happen. Watching this play for the first time, you think, no, my goodness, that couldn't have possibly happened. The Red Wings must have smacked the puck out of Waugh's glove. It's slashing, it's goalie interference, it's something, damn it, have these men arrested. But if you listen to the play-by-play call from 2002, Greg Millen, a former goalie himself, nails it.
Patrick Waugh just got caught hot dogging. Believe me, he was going to give it the how do you do, and he dropped the puck.
Patrick Waugh just got caught hot dogging. Waugh makes an unbelievable save. He robs Steve Yzerman point blank in Game 6 of the Western Conference Final. If that leads to their second consecutive cup, if they even win that game, that save might go down as the most memorable of Waugh's career. And maybe he knew it. Maybe he was jacked up in the adrenaline of the moment in front of a home crowd, and he lifts the puck up for all to see, looking like the Statue of Liberty. Here, can we put them side by side? Is that a thing that's allowed? But the universe has a funny way of laughing at you. In his celebration, Waugh, instead of showing the home crowd the puck in his glove, drops it. What followed? The most juiced up roster in the entire National Hockey League. Seriously, look it up. The Detroit Red Wings in 2002 probably had more guys on their roster that are going to be in the Hall of Fame than aren't going to be. Crash the net. Brendan Shanahan, spectacular NHL career, finished top 10 in Hart voting this season, bangs it in, giving Detroit a 1-0 lead heading into intermission. Now, what do we think each locker room is like? The hardest thing for the Red Wings is probably keeping their composure while laughing. And the Avalanche and Waugh? Think of the dejection, the humiliation, the impending dread. What's worse is the second period began and the Avalanche had every chance to tie this thing. Adam Foote and Luke Robitaille take coincidental minors. That opens up the ice. Kirk Maltby and Darius Kasparaitis take coincidental penalties, although that wasn't for roughing. Kasparaitis got called for diving, which made me laugh. But after that, Draper, Shanahan, and Darren McCarty, 3 consecutive penalties where the Avalanche could have taken advantage. 3 straight power plays in the 2002. You know how hard it was to get 3 consecutive power plays in the early 2000s? In one period in 2002, were they carrying knives? But it wouldn't be the Colorado Avalanche scoring in the second period. No, it would be Darren McCarty of the Detroit Red Wings. He scored a few memorable playoff goals for them, if I remember correctly. And the Red Wings win Game 6, 2-0. Dominic Hasek with the shutout, because of course. And they head into Game 7 in Detroit.
And this is going to be a Game 7. Dominic Hasek has shut out the Avalanche by a score of 2-0. And this goes back to Detroit.
No, okay, the goal was humiliating. The loss was dejecting. But the Colorado Avalanche can do this. They still have Game 7 on the road. Let's stick it to the Detroit Red Wings. Let's get our composure and win this. Is not what happened at all. In Game 7, Patrick Waugh allowed 6 goals. 6 goals in just over 26 minutes. He even got yanked in favor of David Abisher, and the Colorado Avalanche lose Game 7 to the Detroit Red Wings 7-0.
Centering pass in the power play. Score! Frederick Olsen!
I know we all agree Patrick Watt deserves special consideration, but at the same time, special consideration is turning into embarrassment. The unthinkable has happened. The Detroit Red Wings have chased Patrick Watt with an offensive onslaught, 6 goals in less than half a game here in Game 7.
And what did I tell you? We got to see that. Steve Yzerman with the Stanley Cup. The Detroit Red Wings demolished the Carolina Hurricanes 4-1 to become the 2002 Stanley Cup champions. Now, does any of that happen if Patrick Waugh simply makes that spectacular save against Steve Yzerman and holds the thing in his glove? We'll never know. Now, this shouldn't take anything away from Patrick Waugh's career. He was a .918 save percentage goalie in the playoffs throughout his career. Throughout his time with the Avalanche, he had a .922 save percentage. The previous season, when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup, he had a .934. Unbeatable. Unbeatable. In 2002, just a .909, and I kind of have a feeling that Game 7 had a little something to do with it, allowing 6 goals on 16 shots. The following season, the Avalanche go into a first-round series against the Minnesota Wild. They lose in the 7th game, and the final moment of Patrick Waugh's career is getting scored on. If he just holds the puck in his glove like he did thousands of times throughout his NHL career, who knows? And right now, if producer Drew is crying while editing this, I've done my job. Now, it should be mentioned that hot dogging it doesn't always come with negative connotations. Phil Kessel even filled the Stanley Cup with hot dogs recently, but Patrick Waugh hot dogging it on the Statue of Liberty goal is the stuff of legend. So, that is it for this Dang It's video. Do you have another idea for a classic Dang It throughout history? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends not to get caught hot dogging it.